speak with George Su about how to create an SEO strategy with an effective return on investment. First of all, thank you for speaking with us today. Now my first question to you is, what is the best and most cost-efficient way of driving organic traffic to a site?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me. The most cost-effective way is probably, number one, you have to see who you're trying to target, what you're trying to promote. So really the best way is to have your own time invested, depending on what you need to do. A lot of the times what I'm finding is people would come to SEO agencies, SEO consultants, ask them for a strategy, but what they're really asking for is a business plan. Because as a business owner, what you might want to do is, let's say you want to sell shoes online, right? So you know who to buy the shoes from, who you're going to sell it to, but then throughout the whole process, what you're learning is how to establish your website, how to drive leads through to your website, how to increase traffic via organic search, what paid searches, what email lists are, and it's very much a learning process. And I guess more and more I find in SEO is where the connectors of all these processes. So when a new business owner comes to us, we kind of tell them about all the opportunities that exist outside of SEO, as well as why SEO is a good investment in the long run.
Okay. So do you often find yourself educating your clients as much as doing the actual SEO work?
I would say it really depends on the clients. So for the smaller clients, they would come to us to say, I've heard about SEO, free clicks compared to paid search. That's I guess the real benefit for them in their eyes, that once they pay this fee, they're going to get free clicks. But what I find myself telling them is, these are the ways to drive traffic. So you get a return on investment in the immediate, or in not the immediate, but right now, and then we work our way to a long-term SEO strategy. Because with SEO, a lot of the times, unless you forecasted for, or unless you have a very big budget, or have forecasted for over a year, sometimes you're not going to see an immediate result on the SEO strategy, because let's face it, it's getting more and more competitive.
Mm-hmm. So what factors affect ranking on Google these days?
What factors? There's lots of factors. I think in a nutshell, number one, you have to make your website as relevant as possible using keywords. So you can't be talking about, well, let's say you can't have an image or just one or two images on the website that shows the product and not make reference to it via some sort of text that Google can read. The other influence is obviously how other websites refer back to you, and the main way is just by links. So in essence, you have to be relevant, which is what you can control, and also in a way influence how many people are talking about your product and then referring traffic back to your website through links.
Mm-hmm. How does that affect the actual ranking?
So let's say, for instance, you have, it's an even playing field. You've got 10 websites, and all of them are very relevant. Now, in order to have number 1 or number 10 to rank to number 1, it's just by the amount of links, how relevant those links are, who's voting for them. Obviously, if a very powerful website is giving you a backlink, it's going to be more effective than many smaller websites. I guess more questionable websites that people get links from to vote for your website. Sorry, I've just completely lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
No, the question was which factors affect ranking on Google. You came to the point about voting. Some sites might vote by basically linking.
Yes.
You by that refer to that, for instance, a site with a higher page rank will give a better vote than a lower page ranking site?
Yes, so page rank does come into play more and more. So it really depends on what the reputation of the website linking to you is, and not only that, how relevant it is. And then there's heaps of other factors that come into play, like how many other websites are they linking to from that page, and if it's coming from a really good website, how is that page referred to within their whole website. So there's a lot of factors that come into play that you just can't have a link from one website to say, okay, that's enough.
Okay.
And yeah.
How should content be used in an effective SEO strategy to drive traffic and create the highest possible ranking?
That's interesting. Well, SEO right now is all about content. I mean, if we go back and look at the history of SEO, it was really about manipulating search rankings. So, the more links you have, the better rankings you were, as long as you were relevant on your page. So let's say, for instance, a classic example is if you search for the phrase "click here," the number one page would be Adobe, Adobe Reader, and that's because all those websites out there, the millions and billions of websites. Whenever they have Adobe Flash or Acrobat Reader, they'll say click here to install it. So just by that anchor text and all those millions of websites linking back to Adobe to get the Flash player, it's influencing the search rankings to say, look, click here, or Adobe is the most relevant result for click here. But what's happening right now is Google is obviously catching on to that fact that all these practices can be commercialized. So it's turning into more relevant links rather than the quantity of links. And there's obviously an association with if it's very relevant, it's going to have a higher authority, not necessarily page rank, but a higher authority for your particular subject. So in regards to the strategy of content strategy, it is going to be content strategy. It is more and more tailored towards content strategy these days. So the way to really attract links is to you as a business owner, for instance, make sure you have something valuable to add within the strategy, or within the content rather. So it gives people a reason to talk to you or talk about you and then link back to you.
So would you say that a big part of the content strategy nowadays is to find ways to spread the content and utilize the same content multiple ways to basically increase the impact?
Yes, so let's if we break it down, we have to as the owner of the website, we have to make sure that you're talking about something people are talking about or want to read about. That's something that's interesting, that you have some sort of value that you're adding. Number two is making sure that information is given to the right, communities or the right readers, and that again is time on the owner's hands or whoever employee's hands you placed it on to kind of connect with those communities. So that might be engaging on forums, and not necessarily whenever you publish something to say, hey, check out my article here or check out this post, but it's more or less to look at the forums, be helpful, and if the question does come up, if it's a frequently asked question, then that's an idea as a content strategy to answer it on your website, to say, hey, look, I found this great resource, or I've answered it on my website.
Would you tailor make an SEO strategy depending on the site, or would you suggest a generic approach, like you do this, this, and this for each client?
I think a lot of it can be, it's a mixture of both, because you have to have the best practices, right? And the best practices really only affect your website. So I can give a very basic strategy to someone who has just started online, to say make sure you write a relevant title tag, or make sure you have the right words on your website, so it's not all images or or flash or anything like that. So that chunk of it can be very generic, because we're just giving them the best practice guidelines. But as for marketing, or off-site marketing, or off-site link building, so to speak, then that is very much tailored, because we have to focus on the business strengths, what the their existing connections to the business, or like utilize the business owner's existing connections, because a lot of the times that's missed, and that can provide a lot of quick wins.
If you would tailor make an SEO strategy for a business, which considerations are the most important to make? You've already mentioned using existing networks. Which other considerations would you take into account?
So using your existing connections, I mean, if it's local, for instance, with way search is changing as well. If I search for a lawyer or you know what, let's go broader. If I search for football in Australia, I get AFL. If I search for football in the UK, I get soccer, right? So the way search is working, it's becoming more and more localized, and it doesn't necessarily have to rely on links that go back to you. So it doesn't mean website A is linking to soccer.com.au or soccer.com in order to rank for soccer in the UK. So for instance, if you're a local business, I would suggest citations, and that relies on how many other websites refer to your business, your business's name, address, and phone number. So it doesn't necessarily have to have a link back, as long as those three criteria are met on the website, a reference back to your website, then Google's going to take that into consideration as well.
How do you know that?
How do you know that? Testing, testing, reading. That's part of our job.
Can you give any examples of sites where you've done that one?
Yeah, so a good one, a high authoritative ones in Australia are Hot Frog, True Local. They used to be Yellow Pages as well. Traditionally, I think there were always business directories, and people only submitted to them to actually gain a backlink from. But as testing went, some businesses didn't even have a web page, and they just had a Google Maps page. And Google would crawl Yellow Pages to say, all right, to try and populate their listings, and they would naturally rank quite well. So that's one of the examples that we found where citations have worked, and there's lots of information published online as well. That shows the same thing.
Is it possible to do SEO work that has a guaranteed long-lasting effect, or is it just you're playing the game?
Yeah, no, I think with SEO, it's always it's always a risk and reward game. You can't. There really is no. If you're doing SEO, it's funny because if you're doing SEO, you are trying to manipulate search rankings. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. The best way to go about it is to integrate it into your marketing efforts. So you're not there trying to get as many links as possible. You're just trying there to build your brand image. So in terms of long-term SEO strategy, it's not about capturing the most search results. It's about reaching the right audience. That would be the best SEO strategy.
What changes do you see that impacts rankings of sites?
What do you mean? What kind of changes?
Changes, what I mean in the online environments, Google deciding to go for different things. And you already mentioned a very important point, which is that you're basically trying to manipulate something. And what Google is pretty much interested in is high value content, and you want to still be number one. What future trends do you see that SEO experts have to foresee and address?
I think with Google Plus, authorship is going to be a major one. Although authorship doesn't really count for anything right now, apart from if Cameron writes something or if you write something, and your web page is marked up to show your authorship, your photo would actually show in the search results. So the immediate benefit would be that if I'm looking for something and your result pops up, your photo will be there, and I'm more drawn to that result because of your photo. But moving forward, what Google I think is trying to do, and what a lot of people think Google are trying to do, is instead of relying on links, they're relying on who the experts are for a particular subject. So if you've talked about, let's say, laptops or cameras or movies a lot of the times, and a lot of people have interacted with you, then Google's going to know that you're a trusted source, you know what you're talking about, rather than someone who publishes 100 items a day, gets no responses, and it's all junk. Because at the end of the day, Google don't want stupid people writing stuff. They want good people writing stuff, and they want to value those, the links that those good people make reference to.
How does Google track those results? You mentioned previously that they notice the contact details.
Mm-hmm.
Which other ways do Google have of seeing, for lack of better words, the way that consumers respond to the content?
Well, I think that's really the whole reason why Google built Google Plus, because as a Google Plus user, if you post something interesting, I can plus one it, I can respond to it. So as a if we take a step back as Google, we can say that you've published something. Out of the 10 items you've published, half of them, or 80% of them had a reply to. You've got over 100 plus ones or likes, whatever you want to call it. So you're publishing something that people really like, and then from it Google can look at who has voted for you to see if they're real profiles, or if they're fake profiles that were created in the last couple of days just to vote your content up. So with, I guess, Google having control of that platform, it's a very important step to making sure the right people have the right influence.
As a client, what matrix should you look out for when evaluating SEO work?
I think in the beginning, SEO work, you should if you start a site fresh, you should be looking at organic traffic growth to see, not particularly, let's target one keyword. Let's see how many keywords is my website bringing in. So what is the overall breadth of all my search traffic? And then over time, as you've kind of established your brand, what you should see is you're not always going to see a growth in search traffic, because number one, there is a cap. You can't make people search for things, right? Number two is that if you've grown your brand, and if you're publishing, I guess, content in the right areas, you should be seeing a lot more referral traffic. So as long as, going back to the content strategy, as long as you're writing the right information, engaging with the right communities, with the right users, well, you should see a growth in the search traffic to the point where it allows the referral traffic to grow as well.
If you have managed to achieve your SEO goals and get a high rank, how would you suggest that it should be maintained?
Oh, that's funny. Normally people I don't think you can achieve an SEO goal. You can hit a position, but in order to try and maintain it, let's say if you're worried from going position number one, which you've always been consistently at, to position number two, what you're then doing is falling into the pattern of trying to manipulate the search engines. So you go back to number one. So like my answer to that would be not to worry about it. I mean, as long as the traffic is there, continue to publish out the right information for your existing users, because you don't want to neglect your existing users to get new users.
So would you then say that the real work onwards is to basically communicate with your users, trying to learn what they're searching for, and then basically continue from there on with creating content that they want to read?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, where you want to be is to have 100 people visit your website from the search engine. From that 100 people, you might find that 60% are interested in what you have to write, and capturing the details of those 60 people, because those 60 people who might be interested right now may not be interested in the future. So not only should your SEO strategy be, or your overall strategy be, to capture the organic traffic, the search engine traffic, you want to have a mechanism to capture the interest right now as you've brought these new users from search. So that might be, well, I guess the fastest way would be through some sort of email list to say, just have some sort of call to action to say, look, subscribe to our list and we'll bring you, the latest news on whatever you're looking for. So whenever you publish information, instead of relying on them to search for it, you're actually telling them that it's available. So it kind of eliminates that step to actually search for information.
Okay. You mentioned the importance of Google Plus. Which other single elements are important in getting a high rank, for instance, videos?
Single elements of...
Like, for instance, you mentioned that Google Plus is an important element in having a content strategy. What's, for instance, the importance of using video?
I think one of the things people overlook is YouTube is, I think, the second biggest search engine, has the second most amount of searches in the world. So, to me, that's just another community to engage in. So if you're participating in YouTube, you're publishing the right videos, you're sending the right video responses, you're kind of, I guess, picking back off other users on YouTube. So if you have a really popular channel, or if you have a really popular channel and I published a video, then in order to attract your subscribers, then I might make a video targeted to you to maybe it's a in reply to video, to answer your video or to expand on your video. But other than that, I'm still not quite sure what the question is.
Well, the question is more around trying to understand a little bit from a client perspective. What elements are important that you've got to consider? Because as a client, you can be in the position of asking yourself, well, should I do guest blog posting? Should I do going to forums and like? Should I make a video? Where should I concentrate my efforts?
Right.
That is more my question.
Right, okay. I think that really comes down to your target market research to see, what your competitors are doing, how, what your existing users are responding best to, because, you might incorporate a video in your, in one of your, in one of your posts, and if it gets a really good response rate, then you know that you're going to continue publishing videos. But then, at some point in time, there's also a business decision to say, whether or not, if it's worthwhile you publishing videos to actually engage with the user. If you're engaging, or if you're publishing the right kind of videos, because they might have a lot of views, but they might not be converting the users. So, it's just as important to measure that result as to continually try and publish and use different platforms to promote your business.
You mentioned that you could reach a cap where there wasn't any more you could do from an SEO perspective. How do you know that you've reached that ceiling?
When, well, you don't, I guess more to the point is what I was trying to, the point I was trying to make is there's only a limited amount of searches for the users you're interested in. You can't make people search for things unless you look at other strategies such as advertising. You might want to promote a category or some sort of generic product where so for instance, if we take the GoPro, and if you advertise the GoPro, for instance, what people might search for is GoPro alternatives or action cams, and then that might create more searches, but you're telling people what to search for.
Yeah. In terms of calculating your return on your investment, how would you do that as a client? Would you expect a certain percentage of searches if you get to be number 2 or number 3? Is that the way you would do it?
Yeah, generally there is a formula or just a estimate you can go by. I think something like 60% of people will click on the number 1 organic result, and then obviously that tapers off. But the return on investment is really, it depends on your business objective. If you're an e-commerce site, obviously the return on investment, or the objective would be to measure the revenue bought from organic search. So that also relies on how well your website is, or how well your website is converting those users. So if the website's ranking really well and people are clicking on it because it's number 1, but then you have a really high bounce, a really high bounce rate, it means that there's something wrong with your website, or it's not addressing a question. If I'm clicking onto your website and expect a certain thing, I'm clicking off it because it hasn't met my expectation. It hasn't influenced me enough to actually want to convert and buy your product.
Okay. How would you work with a website that isn't converting? would you go back in and try to optimize the landing page?
Yep, there's a few different ways. There's A/B testing. Obviously, in order to get the data first, you might use some sort of heat map tool to see what people are expecting. Obviously, using your competitors as well is a good example of seeing what's missing on your page, because they might have a special offer, they might have like a bigger call to action button, they might have reviews on their website, and add trust symbols such as guaranteed, or have like a really good returns policy, for instance. So if that's missing on your website, then it's really going to hinder I guess your competitive edge, because I'm not sure about you, if I'm searching for something, especially if I'm shopping for something, I'm opening 5 things at once just on the search page and then looking through. I'm not clicking once and then going back. If it doesn't answer my question, or it doesn't, if it's not what I'm looking for, I just simply close it and that's it. Off to the next one.
What type of limitations in your customers' way of viewing SEO gives you like the biggest headaches as an SEO expert? Like, what people expect of your work?
I think a lot of the times people don't understand that the keywords, the high traffic keywords are, I guess, inflated because you might have a certain term and they think it's because it's broad, it's going to reach a lot of people, but it might not be effective for them. What they want to be effective for is keywords that convert. So that might be addressing a question, or it's usually addressing a question, or maybe ranking for something that's model specific, because it's at that point in time. Say if I'm trying to buy a TV, I'm trying to buy a Samsung TV with a particular model number, I already know that I want that particular TV, so I'm going to search for that particular model number, and if you don't come up for it, then it's obviously you're not going to get the sale, but if you do come up for it, then I'm already in the position to buy, rather than just searching for the word Samsung when I'm doing my research, and I could be going to shops to actually purchase the product.
So your focus would then be to focus more longer tail keywords?
Yeah, definitely. I think you need, it really depends on what information you want your website to actually display. So if it's a e-commerce website, then you want a good mixture of both. For long tail key phrases, you definitely want to be in there. You definitely want to be, you definitely want to have a presence, but you also want to have a presence for the broader term keywords where you want to have the right content to answer questions. So if I am searching for broader keywords like TVs, you might have a page about TV comparisons. What's the difference between Sony and Samsung, because that, to me, your website is adding value to my research. I'm more inclined to trust you as a business, because you guys know your stuff. You've done the research to actually purchase, or at least make an inquiry.